Sunday. And if it's Sunday, that means it's time to jump. Not jump anywhere, but jump into the rotation. Hit the music.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I did that well.
That's fantastic. Carlos is on a learning curve right now, and he's way over on the top right now when coming straight down. So, which is good, which is almost the exact same course his RSO is taking right now, we believe, as well. So
I'm going down, yeah.
That's good. Well, it's the other side of the bake, it just has to happen eventually. But my name is Gary Stein. I'm the political director of Suncoast NORML here in Florida and our master of public health. And right below me, and still coming down from this morning's breakfast, is Carlos Ermida, our deputy director and engineer superior.
Where am I right now?
Oh.
Uh-oh. What happened? I didn't hear you. You said something to me?
Yeah, I said, where's the sound effect for you?
Oh, I did it. I did the.
Oh, there it is. And to my right, your left, I think, or maybe the other way around, is our executive director coming to us from above the Beltway, where he hits them below the Beltway. Our executive director, Christopher Cano. And he's also our master of public administration. I forgot to mention that Carlos, along with his engineer's degree, is also our master of business administration. And we three are the masters of cannabis. And that one just doesn't work.
I need new sound effects already.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to get creative, and I just happen to have a sativa on board. I managed to come up with some amazing things when I'm sativating. That's that term you actually use when you're actually using a sativa and you're becoming creative. So use that in your lexicon, and I'll take credit for it. So one of those things about salivating is you have to write things down because you might just forget them afterwards. But the name of this guy's new organization had to have come from total sativation. Now, in the lower right-hand corner here in our secret square is the former political director of the National NORML and now the founder and creator of the Bowl Pac, as in Political Action Committee. I love that name. You have to tell us the genesis of it. Justin Strekal. Justin, how you doing this Sunday?
Gary, I'm doing great, and thank you so very much. It's been too long since we talked, and I'm really excited to be reconnecting and talking about things. So Bowl Pac, I learned many things during my time at NORML, and one of which is the power of a good acronym. And as I was thinking about what I wanted to do in my next steps, I want to win, right? I want to win legalization. And I got a little stoned one night hanging out with my wife, and we were just kind of brainstorming ideas and, better organizing to win legalization. It's Bowl. One of the things I've been chomping at the bit to do is play more directly in electoral politics and make politicians afraid again. Make them afraid of their voters, make them afraid of the political power that comes with the issue of marijuana legalization. So that's how I'm staying in the federal game right now and ready to talk to you about everything that's going on.
I like that concept. I didn't realize that was their main motivation was fear. Although I got to tell you that when we were first getting started with all this over in Tallahassee, we could easily get one of those legislators to run from us as we were heading towards them because they knew exactly what the topic was. Little Kathy Jordan in her wheelchair who had ALS, who was working as an advocate, when they saw her coming, they ran. They literally ran away because they did not want to approach the topic at all. And I thought it was just special interests, but it's special interests and fear.
So I worked on political campaigns for about 10 years before moving to Washington, D.C. and getting engaged in advocacy there. And nothing will motivate a politician more than the prospect of increasing their likelihood of success to win re-election. Nothing will. And that's why the entrenched power structures that make it so easy for them to sit back, just dial for dollars for donors, and then they just run paid comms. That's one thing. In the marijuana space, now, and I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. I have not been following all the things in Florida as of recent, but it's the money talks, and here we still have people power. The numbers are with us. So apathy is what has kept that many politicians. They don't really care. They just think, oh, change is hard, and why move away from the status quo if the status quo is what got me elected? If under the status quo I achieved this power. So we need to flip that mentality, and that means we need to kick somebody's ass.
Well, we have a governor who is a magician. He's a master of distraction, because that is how magic works. If you can have somebody looking at your right hand while your left hand is grabbing somebody else's wallet, you've won. And that is exactly what he's doing right now with this transportation of Venezuelans and Colombians this last week. Anything to divert from the real issues we're supposed to be looking at is by creating a problem, solving it with a terrible solution, and having everybody focus on that while other things are happening. Like, for instance, we just got a cap on medical cannabis, which Chris can go into a little bit more detail. But the fact is, they are actually doing things that they promised they wouldn't do in legislation. They did it as an emergency rule when our backs were turned, essentially. Yeah. And that is how things work. And we see that across the country too. They grab hold of these culture war issues that really are not the main issues that we're worried about or concerned about, like the economy and things of that sort, because they don't have a policy for that. So they have to go ahead and work on something that will just distract them and get their base, who basically are Pavlovian in their responses.
Who's the congresswoman that we spoke to from Washington, D.C.?
Nancy Mace?
I think Eleanor
Norton.
Okay, yeah. So Justin, we talked to this lady, and she really got me on the kick that cannabis reform is not a political party thing. You know what I mean? That it's because she claims that she's ready to legalize cannabis in Washington, D.C. and have this like great system where like marijuana is being sold and everything like that. And her biggest opponent is Biden not allowing it. So, but then here, I'm reminded of something I saw on Facebook where there was like this guy that had like a Trump shirt and like a weed leaf and was like, Republicans, supporting cannabis transcends party lines, things like that. But I got to tell you, like the shit that DeSantis puts us through really doesn't seem like you can be conservative and support cannabis and support cannabis reform in total. It seems like you could be conservative and support corporate cannabis. But it doesn't seem that you can support full legalization, support decriminalization, support the cannabis industry, and I just want to see if you have any like this cognitive dissonance that is incredible to me. If you have any info, any way that we can like combat this, or
yeah. No, Carlos, you raised such an important point that I think not just in marijuana policy reform, but every single aspect of American public policy and society and culture is grappling with right now. Like, cognitive dissonance is not isolated to the Republican Party, right? It is not in any way, shape, or form. But I remember when now Governor DeSantis was a member of Congress, and I was talking to my counterpart at the Marijuana Policy Project at the time, Don Young, who himself a former Republican state lawmaker in Maryland. And him and I, we would always be, dividing and conquering and talking about our targets. And I'm more effective in Democratic offices and he's more effective going after Republicans. And then Congressman DeSantis voted for our appropriations amendments when it came to restricting the Department of Justice from spending tax dollars to go against either medical programs or adult use programs, if I remember correctly, in 2015. I should double check my math on it, but I'm like 90% sure he voted for that DOJ amendment. And he made comments, I remember he referred to, if correct me if I'm wrong here, but like he referred to the existing medical structure as like a cartel system.
Yeah,
I believe he used the term cartel, right?
I remember. I'll back you up on that.
But then he got elected,
Yeah.
and then those companies gave him and his allies quite a bit of resources, aka money, and they spent, and with that money got them access, and with that access they befriended them, and with that befriending they then just adopted the worldview that, oh no, it's okay that we have a crony oligarchic system that prevents people from getting into the market and keeps it into just this established small pool of owners. That happens all over America and everything. And I think one of my biggest frustrations about talking about the economy of cannabis is that cannabis cannot escape both the best and the worst instincts of American style capitalism. And we have we have some of the most innovative motherfuckers, excuse my language, innovative fellow citizens in the world who could do all kinds of amazing things if they have an opportunity. But we also see those who have more resources trying to prevent them the opportunity to be in competition with them. Or they immediately hoover them all up through mergers and acquisitions, and just buy them outright. And hey, some entrepreneurs, they want to build a business, they want to sell it, they want to cash out. More power to them if that's their thing, but that's a whole other conversation. So these things are very challenging. But to Eleanor Holmes Norton's point, the Congresswoman, she is one of the most tenacious individuals. I bet you guys had a pretty good conversation about DC statehood. I hope that whoever heard about it, if they hadn't heard about DC statehood or they had not already been supportive, I hope they are now. As a former resident of the district, I was denied voting rights and representation. But yeah, no, you're right. Biden's the problem when it comes to Congress passed a budget that would have allowed DC, or was ready to pass a budget that would have allowed DC the right to self-determination and setting up legal shops, and it was Biden who stopped it.
Wow. Well, I remember the conversation with Eleanor Holmes Norton was like super like short. Like she was just basically like, "What else do you want me to tell you? Biden's in the way. We got to get Biden out of the way." Like I remember her being very no nonsense. Yeah. But I mean, so here's, and I know that we're like, Gary really wants to talk to you about like what's happening nationally, but like here with what's happening in our state, we literally have people in the cannabis movement voting for DeSantis, thinking he's going to legalize it, right? And then he puts caps on top of it. He says that he can't legalize because of the putrid order. He says that cannabis companies should be paying more in Florida when they're paying outrageous amounts. Like it just seems like this guy's saying one thing and yet people just think another. Like I don't know what we can do with the Bowl Pac or whatever to combat this type of thing, but like it just worries me, man.
So to that end, right now with Bowl Pac, I'm only focusing on federal races. But I have worked with Rep. Chris over the years, and I suppose throwing him an endorsement and elevating. But what you guys need, you need votes in Florida.
There's similar things going from a federal level, and I'll shut up.
Yeah, 100%, right? And that's one of the things. Maybe this will be a good tie-in here to transition to federal from Florida, is when you talk about Ron DeSantis, and I actively disrespect Governor DeSantis, right? Like I think he is a bad person. That is not exclusive to cannabis. I think he has been disingenuous when it comes to cannabis. I think he's abhorrent when it comes to a lot of other things. So I don't, I hope that the voting bloc within the cannabis reform community who's choosing to cast their votes for Ron DeSantis because of that, while not looking at the totality of statecraft and governance and leadership, I'm hard pressed to imagine that's a very large voting bloc. I'm willing to bet dollars and donuts that they're pretty loud about it, right? And the question is how can you be loud about it in countervalence And I think that's not just, if you're a single issue voter, and cannabis is it, then Charlie Crist is your candidate, right? Governor Crist or former governor, current Congressman Charlie Crist has evolved dramatically on it. And I think, having had experience working with his office, he does it in much better faith than Ron DeSantis ever did, even when Ron DeSantis was voting for our amendments in Congress, right? But Cory Gardner, former senator from Colorado, was up for re-election in 2018. He was heralded as, here is a Republican who's willing to take leadership on marijuana policy reform. He was a co-lead of the Safe Banking Act in the Senate, and he was a co-lead under Senator Elizabeth Warren, introducing the Strengthening the 10th Amendment through Entrusting States, or the States Act, which would have codified some criminal protections for cannabis entrepreneurs, and industry owners, but did nothing on the civil liberties side of things, to provide protections for people and from state violence for simple possession. So that's a whole different story, but neither here nor there. But Cory Gardner in 2018, he was polling heavily underwater for his reelection. And when, throughout the course of his last year, he talked to his Republican colleagues all of the time about the Safe Banking Act and the States Act. And then he lost, right? I joke, if Jesus Christ had his second coming to Colorado and knocked on every single door saying, I personally endorse Cory Gardner still would not have been reelected, given how badly Donald Trump was weighing down his approval ratings in the state of Colorado, right? But now we have all of these Republican senators who are of the mentality that marijuana didn't save Cory, right? And we saw the cannabis industry invest a tremendous amount of resources behind him for his reelection. And now he's being handsomely paid as an advisor for a trade association. And I'm sure he's making money through consulting and advice and advising, however else he's doing it. But he didn't deliver the goods. And the zeitgeist he left in the Senate was marijuana didn't save Cory. So why should we take action on this? What's the political incentive here? And, that's, we got to break that both from state level folks when it comes to, what's the incentive to not vote for caps? What's the incentive to vote to allow competition to these existing companies who I've met their people. They've given me money. We met at my fundraiser. They seemed perfectly nice. They made a joke. He showed me pictures of his kids, whatever. Why would I vote against them? I don't feel a pressure to do something to the alternative. And that's our collective action issue.
Now, one thing I thought was kind of interesting is that Mitch McConnell, who's never been a pro-cannabis person, obviously was integral in getting the Farm Act moving forward that actually legalized that industry without realizing, I think, that the amount of regulation and harsh laws across the country would spurn a whole new industry out of the hemp industry that actually includes the Delta 9 from hemp as along with the Delta 8 and the THCO, THCP, THC, that has been integral to the livelihoods of folks like Carlos, who has a cannabis shop, who obviously cannot sell the standard cannabis right now, but all these new isotopes coming out from hemp has actually created a whole new cannabis industry through the hemp industry. And do you see any buyer's remorse on that side?
I wouldn't say I see any buyer's remorse. I think I just, from the limited vibes I've gotten, let me put it this way, because it's not like Mitch McConnell staffers return my phone call when I make it. And it's not like I attempt to make it that often, right? Candidly, I've reached out a number of times over the years. There was one follow-up. But just as a side little cheeky thing I should disclose, when I used to do trivia in Washington, D.C., there have been a handful of times I named my trivia team, Mitch McConnell loves seeing poor black kids get arrested for a joint. So that way the trivia announcer would have to say it every single round and really hoping that message would resonate and hoping Mitch McConnell staffers were in the bar at the time. Hey, we got to meet them where they are, right? But with Mitch McConnell, with the adverse consequences of that, or the unintended consequences, let's say, I think if nothing, it's not buyer's remorse. It's just that much more of a disincentive to evolve on full cannabis reform, right? Because they didn't take it into consideration. Mitch McConnell had been worn down over the years by Senator Ron Wyden and a few other senators who really engaged on hemp in good faith. A tremendous number of farmers in Kentucky pushed hard, and they organized political power, and they pushed him. And it seemed like a non-threatening thing that then turned into a threat. So why would he ever go the next step? And that's why I think one of the worst things for the cannabis reform movement that could happen in the upcoming election is not any particular senator, right? But it's who is going to be the Senate Majority Leader, who are going to be the committee chairs, and that's determined by partisan orientation. And the contrast between Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer couldn't be starker.
And then, you have this internal war between McConnell and Senator Rick Scott from Florida. So, and Rick Scott could not, the sad part is like, who could be worse than McConnell? Rick Scott.
Yeah.
Like that's even the sadder part about it is like, should Republicans take back the Senate and McConnell lose his leadership position, he'll be replaced by someone much, much worse. And it's like, you didn't think it could get any worse. I mean, you just talked a little bit about what, when you say you changed the name on trivia night to Mitch McConnell likes to see black kids go to jail for joints. Well, one of the things that really struck me when I was reading this week was the data from the Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology that showed that African Americans are disproportionately drug tested for marijuana while they're giving birth. And that most folks who underwent drug screens tested negative, but those who did test positive for cannabis, 90% of them were mandatorily reported to child abuse services. And so, coming off of what we're seeing the legislation in New York and California, where cannabis use should be treated no different than prescription drug use, that's something we have to change here in Florida is child welfare laws. I mean, we're seeing women right now in Alabama who are using cannabis during their pregnancy being jailed for up to 30 years. And that is the society that these hard on crime Republicans want to create. This is the consequences of their policies.
100%. Yeah, I have nothing to add to that. I'm so glad you bring that up, and I'm so glad that you're talking about it because it's one of those things that don't get talked about enough.
We had Keith Stroop on a couple of weeks ago, and he made a big point of it as being something that NORML is pushing, and we agree 100%.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, and the National Association for the Rights of Pregnant Women. I'm butchering the acronym. That's not the correct name. Oh, forgive me. Julie Gunnigal, who is a member of the leadership team in Arizona NORML, and she is a candidate for county prosecutor right now. She did some work with a national pregnancy rights advocacy group a couple of years ago, where they were taking up cases like this. And if I'm not mistaken, that's probably what Keith was referring to as like the biggest accomplishment as of late, as far as trying to restore these kind of rights. I mean, I just saw the Marshall Project just published another piece about pregnant women in Alabama just being arrested. It's there's the downstream implications of criminalization and the systemic oppression that it brings is so ingrained.
Well, one of the things that really upset me, though, was the U.S. Appeals Court recently ruled that although Schedule 1, it has this where, cannabis doesn't have any accepted medical utility. It says, and that's what the suit against it, the folks who were suing, was saying it's unconstitutional. It does have medical value. People do use it. And the court ruled, well, it's not unconstitutional, but it is irrational. So basically saying, Congress fucked up, but we're not going to do anything to change it. I mean, that's just mind-boggling, is that the courts are in this position to where everything is in Congress's court. And you yourself, this is your mission, to get a pro-cannabis Congress to get their shit together. Justin, what do we do? How do we support your mission? And what's the next step for us?
No, irrational but not unconstitutional should be my next tattoo. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I highly recommend everybody read Paul Armentano of NORML's write up about that case. It sounds like you already did. So in order to get a pro-cannabis Congress, we've already demonstrated we have the capacity in the House of Representatives if we maintain its current structure, right? Under Democratic leadership with Jerry Nadler as the Judiciary Committee chair, he was the one, along with, and he could not have done it without Representative Earl Blumenauer, Representative Barbara Lee, Representative Hakeem Jeffries, Representative Steve Cohen, and a laundry list of others, but like those were the biggest that they went above and beyond to make sure that bill got not voted on not just once but twice in the last 2 years. It was the first bill to end prohibition to ever get a vote in Congress, and they passed it twice. We know that's not going to happen if Kevin McCarthy takes over as the Speaker of the House of Representatives. They're not going to pass a bill proactively. But my focus has been the United States Senate, and due to the legislative filibuster, we need to make sure that Republicans are coming to the table in something that's close enough to good faith as possible, right? I'm not going to expect good faith, but I want it to be an earnest reckoning. And the way that we do that is we demonstrate that not evolving on marijuana reform can cost you your election. So right now, the Bowl Pac, the Bowl, BOWLPAC.org, you can make a contribution where I'm running this lean and mean. I'm not collecting a check for my work for Bowl Pac. This is my pro bono volunteer work now. We are trying to put together a digital outreach campaign where we are going to reach pro-legalization voters in states where it's going to be a razor-thin election. We're principally looking at Wisconsin right now, and we're considering what other states to expand to, possibly North Carolina, possibly Ohio, possibly Pennsylvania. We'll see. Hey, look, if y'all start showing me some polls where it's neck and neck, Val Demings voted for the MORE Act both times, and in committee as a member of the Judiciary Committee. So I would love to be able to say that I thought Val Demings had a really good shot. And I'm willing to say that if more of your fellow Floridians start telling pollsters that they're going to vote for her, right? And I can't expect marijuana to swing 5 points of an election. But I think in these razor-thin states, if we can show that we're going to be targeting voters with messages that say that who we've identified to likely maybe not vote, have a lower voting score, but who support legalization, we say, look, marijuana reform is on the ballot in the form of your Senate race. You know, Ron Johnson supports criminalization. Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes supports legalization. Mandela Barnes was working with your colleague from NORML, or former colleague now, Allen, up in Wisconsin, doing events, talking about the real issues. Mandela Barnes is a legalization champion. Ron Johnson is an oppressor. And if we can show that we help turn out people to vote who might not otherwise have voted, then I can then run around Congress for the next 2 years and say, we can kick your ass now. We are a part of the ass kicking team. And if you don't want your ass kicked, then you got to come to the table and you got to work. And Chuck Schumer and Cory Booker and Ron Wyden and Jeff Merkley and all these other senators who have given a tremendous amount of thought and consideration about marijuana reform, and all approach it very different ways. They would love to have 5 Republicans sit down with them for a day, for 2 days, for 3 days, and just talk it out. Just talk it out. They say, hey, this is what we know. What do you know? What are you willing, based on what we know, we want these things. What are you willing to accept, right? Steve Daines should be, Republican senator, lead on safe banking. He should be at his back 5 of his fellow Republicans to do that kind of a thing. But right now he cannot get them because they do not feel like this is something they need to prioritize, and we got to change the way they feel about it.
Right now, Val Demings and Marco Rubio are in that less than a half of a standard deviation away from each other, so they're in the margin of error.
Are they really? Oh, forgive me. Yeah, no, Gary, give me a briefing if you don't mind. What's going on? Can you just give me the overview? I haven't looked at the race in a while.
Yeah, it is. It's been going back and forth. Again, it's all within the margin of error. That whether it's Val Demings who's ahead of the poll, whether it's Quinnipiac or the UF poll, and or whether it's Marco Rubio, who is still lauding all of South Florida, who tends to want to just go ahead and just go straight with Republican without even looking at the lever to see which one they're actually pushing. And we know that Marco Rubio's policies are egregious in a lot of aspects. I see a lot of people who are not single issue voters still saying no to him and saying yes to Val Demings, but we need that little push to get her beyond that sway of the standard deviation to get her forward. And of course, we had Max Frost on last week, who beat some really big guys, including the head of the minority party in the Senate here, to get that position. The question is, now that he's gotten to the generals, will he continue to get enough to make certain that seat is still safe? That is my concern, because he is young, and because he doesn't have the name recognition, unless everybody watches MSNBC and sees him on there, that other folks had. I mean, Alan Grayson, his boots offend me. That's besides the point.
The gator skins?
Yeah, you've seen those suckers, huh?
Oh yeah, he would walk around the hill with his gator skins and his American flag tie on. And sorry to interrupt. You triggered me on that one. But what about Grayson? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Grayson, he had enough problems with beating up one or two wives, and so he didn't quite make it. In fact, he fell way behind. But I really felt Bracey, who was very, very pro-cannabis, who had actually had sponsored several legalization bills here in Florida, would have made it. But Max is going to have to do some heavy lifting. I know he's going to do it mostly in regards to the gun reform bills, but we have issues with that here in Florida as well, because we have a lot of guys who are Second Amendment heroes who still don't even understand the Second Amendment in the first place. But that is so typical of that genre. I don't know what it is, but I agree with it.
No, if I can just share a quick story. So in 2015, when I was working in the Virginia State Senate for Adam Eben, the state senator Adam Eben, who I also helped write his decriminalization bill. That's how I got to know NORML. On Gun Lobby Day, he was carrying the assault weapons ban. And I printed out the Second Amendment. I highlighted in a well-regulated militia the first few words of the amendment. And everyone who walked in, I just asked, just so I can best relay your comments to the senator, can you tell me what regulated militias are you a member of? Are you National Guard? Do you have like an organized like block club? These things, I don't know. But in Florida, I mean, look what Nikki Fried has done, the ag commissioner, to change this conversation with her federal lawsuit. And I am here for it. I am, my views on guns are very complicated, and I think maybe one other person in America would agree with me. And I think that's how it is for most people, right? Like, everyone's own perspective is very nuanced, but we distill it down to like 5-word talking points and everything gets lost. But Nikki Fried being able to frame it and how she lost the support of her gun control community when she first brought on this lawsuit, and then they took a few days, they looked at what she was trying to accomplish, and then they said, oh no, wait, we were wrong. Like, we're back on the Nikki train, right? And it's too late now. She lost the primary, but I think she has done a tremendous service when it comes to maturing marijuana and guns as a connected issue in Washington, D.C. from her suit from Florida. And I got to say, as someone who has real trepidation about, gun access in this country, I think it's great what she's been doing. And hopefully that kind of an approach will maybe lead some people who, reflexively vote on guns to reconsider a Democrat and listen to beyond just 5 words because of the work she did on the cannabis suit.
If I had to wrap my mind around what was the best way for that primary to end, we love Nikki, and she's been on the show, and as has Charlie Crist. And I was concerned maybe she'd be able to do more outside of the governor's mansion than inside of it. And since Charlie Crist may have a statistical advantage to getting into that office, which would be a tremendous benefit to us to not have a Rick Scott clone or Ron DeSantis in the office, both of which were devastating to the program itself, and be able to do the kind of organizing that she's doing. And she is starting a political action committee, from what I understand, and she could actually move these things forward from the outside in an organizational fashion, maybe possibly more so as a grassroots than being in the governor's office.
Or as we're postulating possibilities, hypothetically, if Charlie Crist wins the seat, perhaps there's an agency head role or something that would be a terrific, because I came up with this line while thinking about my friend Shalene Title. Now is the time for heroic bureaucrats, right? Now is the time we desperately need thoughtful and well-organized and effective administrators in these roles of government to construct something that we can be proud of as a society, right? I make fun of Florida all the time when it comes to how awful your licensing structure is. I use you juxtaposed against Oklahoma and Oregon, right? And I'm like, look, here are the two extremes, right? Some people say Oklahoma and Oregon gave out too many licenses. I'm not going to say that giving too many entrepreneurs a shot is a bad thing. But then you look at Florida, and it's 12.5 owners. And give me the updated count. How many licensed businesses now of the forced vertical integration do you now have?
22.
22 licenses.
Oh, my talking point is outdated. I've been saying 12.5, so I got to up less than 2 dozen.
Well, you're actually not wrong. We have 22 licenses, but only 15 of them, actually 16 now, are actually active, because Cookies and Jungle Boys are finally starting to wake up, in part because I wrote a bill last session that actually went through as an amendment saying that if you don't cultivate to scale within the 2 years after you get your license, you lose it, and it goes back to the state.
Whoa.
And with the help of Senator Brandes, we got that passed. And that kind of told them that we can't sit on our licenses anymore. We actually have to go out there and start doing things. And I think Jungle Boys and that they've raised the bar for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
And we'll see how well that thing goes forward. But that is where we stand right now. And there was supposed to be the social equity license, the Pigford license, which the applications went out in March, and they have still not done any more than basically vetting the applicants. They haven't really started scoring the applications yet. They're still talking it.
Gary and Justin, if you're looking at the screen right now, I'm actually sharing. These are the MMTCs in Florida that are actually, as you can see, where they at with how many locations each one has. Whether or not they're actually dispensing right now, do they have plants? Are they moving? I know Gold Leaf is up here in the Maryland area, and now they're expanded into Florida. So it's interesting to see these multi-state operators. But of course, you see the granddaddy of them all up here at the top, continuing to push, and then you see these other, the big three, if you will. Here is the top 5. I don't even remember who was the original 5 anymore, with the exception of these two up here. So,
yeah, and don't forget, every single license that was given out so far was originally given out for a CBD only MMTC. There has never been a license actually given out directly by application for a THC license. Not a single one of them. They were either given to them by the courts because they lost, and because they screwed up, or they have been through the merger and acquisition. And what I understand now, the money for M&As right now is way the hell down. So being able to get the money you need for these M&As has been difficult. So what we're seeing now instead is mergers as being more like, giant amoeba fights to see who's going to swallow who first.
And Gary, let's not forget to point out that the state almost tripled the licensing fee for black farmers versus the original licensing fee for these MMTCs.
That's right. And they said they were not going to actually release the applications for the other MMTCs until such time that the Pigford license has been awarded.
How can you not make fun of Florida? Jesus Christ, man. I heard you say that you were making fun of us, and like part of me was like, "What the fuck, man?" But like,
Well,
we
as an
suck, dude.
Ohioan,
We suck so bad.
as an Ohioan, I feel you, right? Like, and I ask people all the time, or I remind people all the time, like, look, I am not the governor of Ohio, right? I just live here. But no, yeah, just specifically for like the licensing structure. Oh my goodness, what a juxtaposition it is when you have literally thousands of companies licensed in Oklahoma alone, right? And it's not like Oklahoma is this bastion of big government liberalism, right? Like, no, that's Florida. Florida is the one that's being restrictive and picking winners and losers.
And sadly, Florida is not run by liberals. It is run by the most conservative of conservatives. So
Sometimes it does feel like supporting the cannabis program here in Florida is like being a big fan of the Browns. Everybody feels bad for you after a while.
Oh, I can't even be a big fan of the Browns anymore after what the owners just did. I don't know if you heard about our quarterback situation, but I really don't like spending $250 million on a PR nightmare that offends everyone.
We have Tom Brady.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, you guys actually do know exactly or very similarly what we're talking about here in Cleveland. Shit, yeah. That's the thing. But no, I will say thank you to Florida. I met my wife when I was working on a campaign down in Florida 10 years ago now. So Florida will always be fond in my heart, if only for only that reason.
So are you going to be supporting strictly Senate candidates, or are you going to keep an eye on the House candidates? Because there are actually some good candidates I would like to see move forward. We had Nancy Mace on. I was really impressed with the state's Rights Act.
Yeah.
Interesting acronym there as well.
Mm-hmm. Reform Act.
Yeah, States Reform Act, which sounds like a Federalist bill, doesn't it? And I think that's why it does garner some support, although she gets some flack from her own party as well. But I found it to be a balanced bill that could get some bipartisan support. Mm-hmm. And where do you see that going?
So I see it going nowhere this year simply because the House has already passed a bill to end prohibition, and it's the chairman's bill, right, of Judiciary Committee. It includes the provisions from the chairwoman of the Small Business Committee, Nadia Velazquez, who did some really, in my view, terrific work, and I was part of that process, advising it, as well as then president of MCBA, Shanita Penny. So I don't see it getting any consideration this year, right? Like the House already addressed it. Now it's the ball's in the Senate's court. But next year, should Republicans take over the House of Representatives, and when I look at the bills that have been introduced by Republicans, and I think which one would be my favorite, which one would I most like to see come to law, it's the States Reform Act, hands down. I am deeply appreciative of Representative Mace and her allies, including groups that I used to fight against in my previous job, right? Americans for Prosperity. Back when I worked on tax policy, there was nobody who was more opposite than me than Americans for Prosperity. And now here we are working in tandem in support of the States Reform Act, because it addresses things like expungement. It addresses things like support through federal programs that are designed to specifically support local entrepreneurs getting into the space, because she included provisions from Chairwoman Velazquez's SBA proposals, right? No bill is perfect. The MORE Act is far from perfect, and as is the States Reform Act. But the States Reform Act is the closest to perfect ever introduced by a Republican, and I hope to see more of her colleagues in the Republican caucus get on that bill, because as of right now, it only has 4 co-sponsors. And Representative Dave Joyce, who similarly introduced a bill that would deschedule, but it doesn't address addressing criminal records, and it does not address providing support for small businesses. That has, if I'm not mistaken, 9 co-sponsors, but I'm going to double check this real quick just because I want to be right about this. But yeah, no, I think Representative Mace has a long way to go. I was glad to see that she prevailed in her Republican primary. We'll see if, I suspect she'll likely be reelected in the general. But No, I mean, she's a great example of a Republican who's evolved on this issue, or not who has evolved. She's always been a supporter, but she represents someone who can help usher in evolution of her colleagues. And we need to arm her with the receipts. I, as an ally of hers, despite on a different part of the ideological spectrum, need to arm her with the receipts saying, hey, Republican colleagues, if you don't evolve on this issue, they're going to come after you. And I have a lifeboat for you. Look at my States Reform Act. Come work with me, right? That's the way I can be a good ally to her, despite being on the other end of the ideological spectrum more broadly.
I see her as the Dana Rohrabacher without all the egregious stuff that he also agreed on.
I don't want to go down a tit for tat road. The egregious off there. I appreciate working with Rep. Rohrabacher on a lot of issues, but he had a lot of perspectives that I did not share. As does Nancy Mace. Nancy Mace holds a lot of views that I don't share. But on cannabis, on this issue, we should work together. And on this issue, I hope she brings in more of her Republican colleagues.
Well, we're hoping that candidates like John Fetterman will tip the scales in there. And I'm actually hoping that Herschel Walker will also tip the scales in that state, because he is totally, I wouldn't say unqualified, but he is a poster child for TPI. And I can see that him actually pushing the Democratic candidate forward.
Well, Gary, I would not count your chickens before they hatch, because as we have seen that the base in the South among conservatives can astoundingly put an absolute unqualified person in office. As we've seen multiple times, whether it's Marco Rubio, Rick Scott, Ron DeSantis, or even Donald Trump. So, don't be shocked if I don't think Georgians are in that spot. I think there's going to be other things to consider in that race, especially Stacey Abrams, kicking Governor Kemp's ass in the debates and lighting up her party on fire. And she's done a lot with voter outreach, registration. So, but yeah, Herschel Walker is a symptom, actually, of what, the Southern conservative think is a good candidate. And a former MMA fighter who beats the shit out of reporters and ex-wives and denies that he even has certain kids and side babies is the epitome of what they think is the ideal person to put in the U.S. Senate. What do you want me to say?
Yeah, I love the fact that he said he actually had a kid who was illegitimate.
I'm sorry. He said he had a kid who was what?
It's not easy to pronounce either, but he said that he realizes he has a kid that's illegitimate.
All right.
Well,
I really hope Senator Warnock pulls it out. I had the good privilege of briefly meeting him once before he became senator, and working with his staff in my last year at NORML. They were trying to really engage on Safe Banking Act conversations to find ways to make sure that there would be access to capital for minority entrepreneurs. Because they had concerns about the existing package and just how there was no protections, and then all of a sudden, all these industry people are saying, "Oh, this is good for social equity applicants. Oh, this is good for Black entrepreneurs." And we looked at the bill, and there was nothing for any of that, right? So the industry kind of moved the goalpost in its rhetoric, and Reverend Warnock was like, "Okay, well, if you're moving the goalpost, let's move it. Yeah, that's a good direction. Let's go." I know he's been talking with Sarah Booker and others about that kind of stuff. I don't know. These are crazy times. And I'm so deeply appreciative for the opportunity to come talk with you guys and what all you're doing and fighting for down there in Florida. Because, yeah, Florida's a mess. And Gary, I looked up the polls on your Senate race. I was wrong. I was thinking about a poll I saw that was like 3 weeks ago where Rubio was up by 7. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, Florida's in play, and I should be paying better attention.
Well, I always worry about polls, too, because sometimes the people who fund the polls sometimes manage to skew the sampling. Let's put it that way.
It's amazing what you can do with data. You can make data. I could slice the same data set away to make it look 3 completely different versions of reality.
And then sell that poll 3 different times to 3 different campaigns. That's how they do it.
All with the same poll. Hey, man, that's capitalism and campaigning right there.
Well, that's why we believe that we need to get more of our candidates on the show so we can let people actually hear them speak to more than just the average mainstream media person, so they can actually hear what the person has to say in an unscripted fashion. Fetterman, I'm trying to get you on the show. Get your damn best hoodie on and come on the show.
I think I'll echo. I'll tap my points of contact at Fetterman after the election. I think he's got to focus on getting PA voters every moment between now and election day. But he should come talk to if we are so fortunate that he gets elected to be U.S. Senator for Pennsylvania. Absolutely, his actions are going to impact Florida, and I'll say he should come on the rotation after he wins.
I think even if we were able to somehow fix Ohio, it would help Florida on a national basis, because I mean you want to make fun of Florida, that's fine. I can make fun of Ohio all day long.
And deservedly so. Part of my being from Cleveland, I typically don't say I'm from Ohio. I say I'm from Cleveland, and when I thought about what I want to do with my adulthood, right, what kind of a civic person I want to be, it's I wanted to move home. I wanted to make my city better. Cleveland is worth fighting for, and if we want, I can swear on this. Is that fine?
Yeah,
that's fine.
Okay. If we want to unfuck America, the fastest way to do so is to unfuck Ohio. And the fastest way to unfuck Ohio is to unfuck Cleveland. So I'm trying in my own small way. I'm working locally on a wage theft campaign. Things are so bad I became a Democrat. It's now I'm like the secretary for my ward club. Like these kind of things. I hope all your listeners are trying to think about every lever of power that they could influence, right? Because power is going to concede nothing without a demand, and it's going to take, it's not a simple flip of a switch. I like to think about it like power is this wall of switches, and we have to pull them at varying times and in set frequencies, and some we got to only pull half, and some we got to push up, and it's an incredibly complicated moving machine, and it takes every part of it, and then we'll have a chance to win, right? To win whatever winning looks like to us. But Ohio and Florida, we're in similar boats, right? I mean, you guys got a crazier governor. I think we have a crazier legislature. It's we got a long ways to go, but that's why it takes you guys talking to people and having these candid conversations.
I mean, Sherrod is solid, but I know that we have to deal with the loss of Portman's seat. Portman was I would always say a wavering moderate when I knew him when I was living in Cincinnati. By the way, too much chocolate in your chili will kill you eventually. By the way,
it's a good tip. Yeah, anyone who comes to Ohio, if you don't know what that means, come visit Southern Ohio. You'll know what that means.
Chocolate in the chili. Tell me y'all at least got cornbread to go with it.
No, it's spaghetti actually. They're big into the mole sauce, so that's Cincinnati for you.
Gotcha. Well, Justin, as we close out, again, tell the listeners, tell the folks at home how they can support the Bowl Pac and really make a difference in this upcoming election.
So check out our website, thebowlpac.org, on Twitter, The Bowl Pac. Look, help throw 5 or more down. Help us pack the bowl. Help us kick some prohibitionist ass. We want to go after prohibitionist Republicans who are running against pro-legalization Democrats, so we can send a message that an electoral coalition that includes legalization supporters is unstoppable. And the only way we're going to do is we're going to communicate with people and get them out to vote who might not otherwise. So thank you so very much for all you do. I cannot wait to come on again. I hope I will. Maybe we could talk about this again after the election and kind of do a post-game wrap-up. Gary, I always love hearing about what it is you're up to down there, and Chris, your advocacy and passion has just been an inspiration to me for years since I've been at NORML. And Carlos, I want to run a line by you real quick before we wrap. With thinking about all this stuff, back to when we were talking about hemp and everything, I think about Delta 8 and all the THC what have yous, as Gary said, as like new Coke, right? And we're just waiting for full access to Coca-Cola Classic, right? And get that Delta 9. Is that a bad characterization? Is that okay?
No, I love that characterization. Actually, I hate when people come in here and they're like, "This is fake," and I'm like, "Dude, it's right in front of you. This is totally real. It's just a little different."
Yeah.
I dig that, man.
Well, hey,
we're going to have a whole new Commissioner of Agriculture coming up, and we'll see how our whole program morphs. If it does, we'll try to maintain the status quo and keep things solid for our literally thousands of entrepreneurs who have cannabis shops that only can sell hemp products, like Carlos. And
I apologize. My aunt's trying to call me on Facebook. Let me turn this off.
Quick question again. What does the Bowl Pac represent as an anagram?
Better organizing to win legalization. We got to come together. We got to pull the right levers of power. We got to kick some ass and make politicians afraid. So we're packing the bowl. We're going to hit them where it hurts, the ballot box.
That's right. That's right. And, you know, if you want to get more involved, we're having our next general membership meeting for Suncoast NORML. So for all of you out there watching, join us at our next membership meeting. It's September 29th at 7 p.m. It's going to be over Zoom, so you can join wherever you're at. It's open to the public. So, of course, you don't have to necessarily be a member to join. But if you're interested in learning more, go to our website. You can RSVP there and get the link, or you can check out the link there that we have in the chat and join our next general membership meeting. The most important thing to take away in all of this is get off the couch and do something. You know, we want folks to, you know, if you want to see change happen, you have to be active about it. So, you know, put down the indica, spark up some sativa, and let's go kick some ass.
Yes, the power of salivation is real.